1. From 2006 to 2011, I worked in the electronics department at the local Walmart in the small city I lived in. Through those 5 years I had worked there, I had plenty of creepy encounters with strange customers, especially considering the state hospital was directly across the road. This story isn't just a regular old creepy encounter, but something that would lead to me being stalked for nearly a year. It all started in 2010, on a night I was working second shift. I was doing my end-of-shift ritual when a woman in her late 50s interrupted me. She was with a little girl, no more than 3 or 4. "Excuse me, I need help with my cell phone." She spoke softly. She proceeded to tell me her problem. "I need to turn my phone into a straight-talk phone. The girl earlier said you could do it." Of fucking course she did, I thought to myself, but my lips said, "Sure, let's see what I can do." She handed me a 6-year-old phone from Verizon, and I knew as soon as I saw it, I wouldn't be able to do what she wanted. I explained she would have to buy a new phone from Straight Talk and transfer her old number. Basic shit, really. Now, I always took my job seriously and held myself to the highest standard of customer service. I would often receive letters to the store from customers complimenting me. So I assure you I did nothing to actually piss off this lady. But sure as shit she was pissed. "Why the hell would I buy a new phone? I already have one!" She's screaming at the top of her lungs, her claims of me upselling her and being a corporate goon. I finally managed to defuse the situation, and as she left the department she gives me the classic, "You'll never get a job in this town again." As I'm getting ready to leave, my shift manager stops me and tells me I got a complaint at customer service from a lady claiming I swore at her granddaughter. Apparently, I told her to fuck off. I explained what happened and he just laughed it off. My managers knew it was very unlike me to say anything like that to a customer. I wish the story ended there, but then I wouldn't be writing this. For the next several weeks I would get complaints about things I've never done. Sometimes even on my days off. I would come into questions from management nearly every day. It was complaints ranging from me being rude to a customer, all the way to me doing drugs in the parking lot on break. All these complaints were coming from 2 women. As it turned out, it was cell phone lady and her adult daughter. It turns out they have been scoping out my work schedule and started coming in nearly every day. They would walk through electronics to make sure I was working, and later that night I would have a complaint. This happened for months. It happened so much, management deemed her Corzor's favorite customer. To be honest, I didn't care much. I even thought it was pretty funny. I never got in trouble and everyone knew these ladies and just blew it off. I started caring when she took it to a new level. She started to follow me around. I would see her when I was around town. She made it clear she knew where I lived and would regularly walk by my house. I would see her standing out front just looking at my place. I began getting complaints to the city about my property. Grass too tall, old shed in my yard, my fire pit. Basically everything. She even found out my girlfriend's name and began complaining at her job. I knew it was her. She would make it so clear that she was following me. Sometimes she would stop in and ask me questions at work and act like the nicest customer. A few times she asked me things like, "How's your girlfriend?" Or my favorite, "How can you afford that big house on your little Walmart wage?" For about 7 months she stalked and slandered me. I started telling her I knew what she was doing and to stop. But she played it off. I couldn't report her. She never once threatened me. She was just making my life hard. By this time, everyone in my life knew about this nut job. One night, I'm grabbing dinner with my friends from work, and we're joking about it when someone says, "What if you just counter-stalk her?" At first, I thought it was a terrible idea. But they convinced me it would work, and they would all help me. So we hatched a plan like something you'd read on R Pro Revenge. It went as follows: find her job, find her name and address, make complaints in the same manner as her, find out all the rumors she's told about me, make it clear that we know. Show her that we have numbers. I found out her information easily enough. Turns out she didn't live anywhere near me. I was even friends with a few of her co-workers. They would keep me informed on crazy shit she said about me, and even told her to stop. We began doing exactly what she was doing to me. We did this for about 4 months. The more we dug up on her life, the more I found out about how obsessed she was over getting me in trouble. She had claimed that I assaulted her. She urged others to report me and follow me. She told police I was a potential drug dealer. Eventually we won though. She started putting together that there were 6 of us digging into her life and asking questions about her. My last month at work I didn't get a single complaint. In fact, I never even saw her anymore. The day after I quit though, I heard she was in the store complaining about a new person, after asking one of the managers why I quit. I'll honestly never understand why she was so hell-bent on destroying me. I just told her to buy a $20 prepaid phone. 2. So a little backstory. I met this guy when he moved to my town during my junior year of high school. I was with a friend of mine. He seemed to like her. She told me she would go over to his house whenever she wanted someone to buy a cheap cigar for her. He was 18. Then my friend told me that he was having a party and that she wanted me to come with her. I trusted her to protect me at the party, as long as she was sober. However, I doubted she would be sober the whole time, and she might possibly pass out. Lucky for me, I just met a guy at school that I really liked. I figured I'd use this party as an excuse to text him, and ask him to stay on the line with me while I was at the party. I went to these parties a few times. Eventually, I started dating the guy I met at school, and he wanted me to stop going to the parties. The guy who was throwing them started showing a strong interest in me instead of my friend. A little while after I stopped going, he moved away, and I didn't hear from him again for another year. When I graduated high school, the guy I was dating and I got pretty serious. He went into the army and I got a job at the local gas station for the summer. Everything was going great, and eventually I got engaged. Then one day the party guy comes back. He comes in with a few guys from my old class, but quickly ditches them in order to talk to me for nearly 2 hours while I was on the clock. My boss told him to leave me alone during my shift. He called him my boyfriend multiple times. However, English wasn't his first language, so I had a problem explaining my situation to him, that this guy was nowhere near that. He then started coming to work every day, asking if I was working that day. If I was, he'd stay waiting for me to get on my shift. If I wasn't, he'd go to my house. If I wasn't home or at work, he'd knock on my door and convince my mom that I promised to hang out with him, so he could sit on my couch and wait for me. My boss told him that he couldn't visit me at work unless his main reason for the trip was to buy something, and he didn't keep me from working. I remember my boss pointing out to me that he was circling the gas station in his car one night. He asked me if I was getting picked up by him after my shift. I told him I wasn't, and he laughed it off. Neither my boss or my mom understood how creepy this shit was. I would constantly come home to him sitting on my couch. I would tell my mom that he was stalking me, and that I didn't want to see him again. My mom was adamant that I not hurt his feelings, and said he obviously just had a little crush on me. He would talk to me for hours after work about how much he liked me and my sister. I would constantly tell him that I was engaged and didn't want to hang out with him because he was obviously flirting with me. Then he would say he was really there to see my sister, who was also in a committed relationship, and didn't want to see him. He went back and forth, not paying any attention to the fact that neither of us were interested in having anything to do with him. I didn't talk to my fiancé about it because he was all the way in Florida, and there was nothing he could do about it anyway. I told him about my problem with my mom and her drunk friends, and he offered to take some kind of emergency leave to come get me before he finished secondary training. But I didn't want that. I knew that telling him about this guy would add to the pile, so I didn't. After 2 months of staying away from work or home whenever I could, I finally decided to take up my father-in-law's offer to come live with him until my fiancé got out of training. I didn't tell my mom or my stalker where I was going. I stayed up all night packing my stuff, and I took my car to my father-in-law's house. I privated all my social media and blocked my stalker and all of his friends. Then a few months later, my fiancé and I got married and moved far, far away from that place. I still haven't talked to him a lot about it. However, I know he has no way to come here and find me, so it doesn't matter. 3. This was about 2 years ago, but the ordeal lasted over a year, and hopefully has finally ended. I just started university when I met him. His name was Ricky. Actually, it was the second day I was there. We both lived on campus in the same building, on the same floor. We were on the elevator, and Ricky started talking to me. I didn't mind, since he was friendly enough, and he was the first person I had met other than my roommates. Eager to make friends, we decided to hang out later in that day. My campus had a beach that many of the students would go to, and we decided to go there. We flirted a bunch, and I was getting pretty comfortable with him. Later on, he wanted to go back to his room to smoke, and invited me to come with him. Figuring this could be a possible time to get a little more than just flirting in, I again agreed to his offer. We went back to his room and ended up doing more than just kissing. After that, Ricky and I would hang out often, since it was pretty easy with him just down the hall. It wouldn't always just be me and him. His friends were there too. The other friends that I had didn't like Ricky all that much, which should have been my first clue that there was something wrong. But I liked being around him, and he was nice to me and his friends. Over the next couple of weeks, I started to develop feelings for Ricky, but it just didn't seem right, and I didn't think we would be more than friends. One night of drinking, I ended up kissing on his friends. Nothing more than a little kiss. He stopped, and we went to go talk to Ricky. The guy came back and told me not to mention the kiss to anyone. At the time, I wasn't told what they talked about, but I later found out that his friend asked him if me and Ricky were together, and he said yes. Now, I was a little put off by this, but also a little excited. Being a girl of subpar attractiveness, I liked the feeling of someone wanting to be in a relationship with me. Me and Ricky discussed it, and we started dating. We got in a big fight not long after that, over I don't remember what, and he ended up kissing another girl from our floor. This is another time I should have left, but I really had true feelings and thought that it wouldn't happen again. This is when it started to get really bad. Ricky began dealing pot around this time. It didn't bother me, but it will become important later on. He began to get controlling with me, never even letting me touch his phone, guilting me into staying in his room, never mine, lying to me about many things, telling me he loved me even when it wasn't true. This went on for about 2 months, when just after Christmas break, I decided to end it. It was hard because I truly felt like I loved him, but I would do anything for him only to get yelled at for nothing. He blamed me for everything that went wrong in his life, and would always tell me that his friends hated me, therefore they hated him. After we broke up, he would always try to sleep with me, and me being dumb I would because I truly thought that I could get him to love me back again. Until Valentine's Day came, I invited him over to hang out, since we were the only ones on campus during spring break, and I was bored. This caused a huge fight that involved him breaking into my room to steal something valuable from me. The whole night he would constantly text, telling me that he was going to make sure I was miserable and that he was never going to leave me alone. I received over 50 plus text messages from him. The next morning it didn't stop, and I was so scared I contacted campus security, and they told me that I could have pressed charges. I didn't, mainly because I just wanted to stop, and I didn't want anyone to be mad at me because of it. The campus security ended up writing it up and put in place that neither of us were able to have contact with each other. And if he or I did, campus security could be notified and further action would be taken place. This worked for a while. Fast forward to almost the end of the semester. Through a mutual friend, it was told that I wouldn't care if he decided he wanted to talk to me again. We had many mutual friends and I didn't want it to be a choice between us two. He found this out and began talking to me. He seemed to understand that what he did was not okay, and he apologized for everything, saying that he was better. And I believed him. I really wanted to believe it. Not because I loved him, but because after our fight on Valentine's Day he apparently went on a downward spiral. We talked every once in a while, but once school was over and I had to leave, it was supposed to be the end. Or so I thought. When I was moving out, I didn't have enough room in my parents' car, and I knew Ricky's roommate, Jonas, was staying long enough on campus that I could leave it there and pick it up later. Me and Jonas ended up hanging out, and we had such a great time before he left that we ended up dating. Now, this is when the shit truly hit the fan. Ricky would constantly text me, telling me that he was so upset that I would do this to him, that I left him for his friend. He told me that he loved me and he wanted to have children with me and that I was his soulmate. At the same time, he would be texting my boyfriend that he was glad that Jonas was with me and that he wished I was happy. During this time, Ricky began to deteriorate fast. He was smoking and dealing pot so much he was so paranoid. He had no friends because he treated everyone like shit. I believe that he truly felt that if he didn't have me, he would have been lost. After the messages that Ricky was sending me got more and more threatening, I just didn't even want to bother with him. I decided to delete and block his number, as well as block him on Facebook. After that, he created another Facebook account and tried talking to me. I told him to leave me alone. I blocked him. He created yet another account, trying to talk to me. I told him to leave me alone, that I didn't want anything to do with him. I was happy with Jonas. I blocked this account as well. He made one last one and tried talking to me, and I told him I would go to the police if he messaged me again. I blocked it. I was scared at this point, though. He knew where I lived and told me that he was going to break into my apartment and do many different things to me that were not pleasant. Jonas, being an ex-friend of his, didn't think he would harm me. With school coming up, I was scared that he would try something. Jonas no longer went there, so I didn't have someone to make sure that I would be okay. Throughout the semester, I would see him at school, as our campus was small and I was there every day. He would stare at me while I tried to avoid him at all costs. Every time he would see me, he would message Jonas to try and cause a fight, usually bringing me into the conversation. Jonas didn't care to fight and just laughed it off. I didn't like that Ricky was messaging Jonas, but I was happy he didn't message me anymore. During the Christmas break, on Christmas Eve of all days, I received another message from him over Facebook. My heart dropped as I read his name. I opened the message and he told me how much he misses me and he hopes I'm happy and he wishes that we could be together again and together forever. He tries to guilt me by telling me that he has been diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic, which I later learned was a lie, to try and get me to become friends again. I told him that he was pathetic to keep doing this. Why would you create 4 accounts to talk to someone who didn't want to talk to you? He messaged me back the next day, Merry Christmas. I didn't hear much from him after that. It made me worried because neither me nor Jonas heard from him, but I was hoping that I was the last time. Nope. Ricky messaged Jonas again about 3 months later, asking for my number so that he could message me about giving me fish. Jonas told me that he had said no because he didn't feel comfortable to do that. Again, 2 weeks later, the same message. Response the same. The final message either of us received was the day before I moved to transfer school. Was that, can I have her number so I can get the fish tank back? Jonas told him that I was no longer living in the same city, and I didn't have it. It's been about 7 months since I've heard from him. Happy that he is finally gone. I'm currently living with Jonas, and going to a different school in a different town, and Ricky has no idea where I am. I have heard several stories about him from many people, that he constantly is trying to sleep with girls that don't have anything to do with him, failing out of school, and doing and dealing cocaine. I made a terrible mistake talking in that elevator that one day, Ricky, so let's not meet again. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 220. Big thanks to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I was pleasantly surprised today when I checked on Reddit after a few days to discover there was actually not the usual number of stories, but that it was quite a few decent looking stories worth checking out. And even more pleasantly surprised that within about 5-10 minutes of contacting those people, 4 of them had said yes. So that was nice. Anyway, was it just me, or is in that last story, I was just thinking as I was narrating it there, that story number 3, that Wiener Boy with the pot and the drugs and all that, when he was talking about his fish tank, I kept picturing Eddie from Friends. You know Chandler's roommate? He was kind of crazy. He ended up putting a goldfish cracker in the tank and saying it was his new fish. Anyway, I couldn't shake that image from my head, so I'm going to head off for now with leaving that image in your mind. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.